Hello, this is Daniel from soundheadquarters.com. In today's video, we're doing this really cool home theater, and we're taking the room from this to this using our acoustic panels. We're building some acoustic clouds, and we're integrating LED backlighting into all of them as well. I'm going to show you step by step the entire process. So the first thing we're doing is getting our acoustic panel frames built. I'm using 2x2x8 lumber, and I'm going to go ahead and get all of my cuts. So the majority of our panels are going to be a standard size of just over 2 feet by 4 feet at 27 inches by 51 inches. And then we have a few custom sized panels as well, which you'll see coming up in the video. So I'm going to go ahead and get all of my markouts done, and we're batch cutting these 2 at a time. So I'm cutting all of my 4-foot lengths first at 48 inches, and then my short sides of the standard size panels are cut to 27 inches. So I'm just using my miter saw there, cutting these 2 at a time, making sure that the wood is nice and lined up, that all my cuts are consistent. Just taking my time, no reason to rush this stage, and making sure that all of the panels are nice and consistent with each other. So I can get all of my 27-inch pieces cut right now, and I'm just keeping them in pairs. That way I know that 2 4-foot lengths and 2 27-inch lengths make up my acoustic panel frame. So now we're ready to screw these together. I'm using 2 3-inch construction screws on each corner. And here's a close-up shot of how I do this. So I pre-drill first with a drill bit, so that way the wood does not split when we drive the screws in. And you can see I'm using the ground as a guide, and I'm keeping those screws closer to me rather than closer to the floor. And that is because the face of the panel that's on the floor is the front side of the acoustic panel. And I'm gonna be running this acoustic panel frame on a router table. As you can see right here, this is what's gonna give the front face of our acoustic panel that nice 45-degree chamfered edge. This isn't a necessary step, this is just more of an aesthetic thing, just to make these panels a bit more nicer looking, a bit more professional. But you can see I'm just running the frame along that router table. I'm doing 2 passes per side. The first pass gets rid of the majority of the material, and the second pass just makes sure that we have a nice, clean, consistent cut. So now we are ready for upholstery. So I always start with the rear side of the acoustic panel. This is just a standard black polyester, and just going ahead with my pneumatic stapler and just getting the whole perimeter stapled so we can contain that acoustic insulation. Now I'm cutting out my front-facing fabric and laying it out on the table, face down. This is a nice heavyweight solid black wool, and that was all just according to the client's wishes of having a nice solid heavyweight fabric to blend in with his walls in the home theater. So now we're ready for the acoustic insulation. You can see it just press fits right into the frame. That is rock wool comfort board 80. So now I can lay it face down on the panel, or on the table rather, on top of the fabric, and I can start upholstering the panel. So I'm going around and just making sure that I tension all 4 corners first. Then I like to staple down one long side, then tension and staple down the opposite long side, and then I do both short sides, making sure that I really get those corners to be nice and taut. That way there is no wrinkles or any visible issues with the fabric on the front face of the panel. There's plenty of videos of upholstery on my channel as well, if you want to check that out. Right now, we are building the mounts that are going to mount these panels with an air gap off of the wall so that we have a space for our LED lighting. So I'm building what's called a French cleat right now. I am cutting this 3/4 inch plywood on a 45-degree angle and making 2 equal pairs, as you can see right there. So one side is going to drill and screw into the wall, and then the other side is going to screw into the panel in the opposite direction. So more on that later. Right now we are getting the frames for the acoustic clouds built. So this client wanted to go ahead with 4-inch thick acoustic clouds. So we're building 3 of these frames. I'm using a 5/8 inch plywood to build these frames. And then once I have them ripped to 4 inches wide, I can go ahead and get them all cut to size. So I'm cutting my long sides to 48 inches and my short sides to 24 inches, giving these acoustic panel frames the final dimension of 2 feet by 4 feet, once again to accept our acoustic insulation. So I put 1 middle brace down the center, and I put a brace on the tops and bottoms, and I give these braces about 1/8 of an inch off of the face of the panel. This view right now is actually the rear side of the panel. since these panels are going to be hanging down, those braces act as a holder for the acoustic insulation, which you'll see in a moment here. So I'm getting all of my fabric cut preemptively, and I can go ahead and get the rear side and front side fabric cut, because the upholstery process for these is a little bit different than the previous acoustic panels. That is the Rockwool Safe and Sound. This is a thicker and softer acoustic insulation. So you can see I laid that panel with the brace side down, and I put it on top of the front fabric first, put the insulation in, and then did the rear upholstery. And then I can fold over and do the front upholstery. This is so that the acoustic insulation is nice and contained, and I always want my front fabric to overlap my rear fabric. That way it just provides further security for getting all of that acoustic insulation being nice and sealed on the inside of the panel, so that the fibers aren't escaping from the panel. So there you can see the finished product. And once again, I have lots of specialty upholstery videos on my channel where I show in detail a lot more of the upholstery process if you want to check that out and follow along step by step. But now we're going to get into the actual installation side of this client's job. So right now what I'm doing is I'm putting down Gorilla Tape on the rear side of these panels. So I'm covering up all of the staples and the cut edge of the fabric. But the reason why I'm putting this tape on, as you can see right there, is to give me something glossy for my self-adhesive LED strips to stick to. Because if I didn't do this step, those LED light strips would not stick to the fabric. They need something glossy to actually stick to. So that's why we were putting that Gorilla Tape on the rear side of the panels. So then you can see I nailed in that French cleat onto the rear side of the panel, and I gave myself about 1 inch from the top of the panel so that I have space for that LED light strip to run around the perimeter of the panel, which you'll see here in a minute. So now that I marked out on my wall where this panel is going to be placed, I can set up my laser level, as you can see. That way I know that all of the upper panels around the whole room are going to be at the exact same height once I get that laser set up. So you can see I'm nail gunning in that French cleat, and then just a few small ones in the bottom corners just to act as a spacer. That way when these panels hang on the wall, they are hanging a nice and consistent 3/4 of an inch away from the wall around the entire perimeter of the panel. So what I did there was I screwed in I pre-drilled through my anchor with a small drill bit that gave me a pilot hole through the French cleat and into the drywall. Then I can drill out the drywall, screw in my drywall anchor, and then screw that French cleat into the drywall anchor, and then just hang the panel. So once I hung all my panels and I knew my exact layout and everything was good, I could go ahead and start putting these LED light strips on the panels. So what I did was I started from the long side where the actual power supply is, stuck them on around the perimeter of the panel, and then wherever I had a joint that I was able to cut the excess of the light strip off, that's what I did. I cut it down to size and then stuck it onto the rear side of the panel. Now we're going to leave all of the actual wiring and conduit for the very end of the job. Right now what I'm working on right there is screwing in for the acoustic clouds. So on this bulkhead right here, since it already was a lower section of the ceiling, this client wanted these clouds to still be that nice lower profile 2-inch thick acoustic panel frame. And then we're doing the 3-inch or the 4-inch thick rather acoustic frames on the taller sections of the ceiling. So what I did there was I screwed in my drywall anchor and put in an eyelet hook into it. And now on the rear side of those acoustic panels, I am just screwing in an open eyelet. That way the open eyelet can just lock and slide right into the closed eyelet that's on the ceiling there. And that's how I installed those 2 thinner acoustic clouds under that bulkhead. Now I can go ahead and get all of my layout done for the thicker acoustic clouds. And you can see we have all of these banks of pot lights in this client's ceiling. So what I wanted to do was make sure that these acoustic clouds were centered in between each group of pot lights. So what I did was I used the laser, I used masking tape, did all of my layout and followed that exact same process of first drilling, then screwing in that drywall anchor, and then screwing in the eyelet hook into the drywall anchor. Here is the rear side of these acoustic clouds, the 4-inch thick acoustic clouds. You can see I did that exact same process of putting down that black Gorilla Tape, doing the LED light strip around the perimeter of the panel, and then screwing in those eyelets, those open eyelets. Because same thing on those clouds there, The closed eyelets are in the ceiling, and then the open eyelets are on the panel, and then that open eyelet can just slide right into the closed eyelet, and that suspends the acoustic clouds. So once we have everything installed, we just got all of the electrical plugged in. And as you can see, we have a great big wiring mess right now that obviously needs to be managed. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna use a stick-on conduit to neatly manage all of these cables. Now, this conduit has a D-shaped profile, as you can see, and we used a larger conduit so we can fit some of the client's other like HDMI cables and other cables that need to get routed around the room. But as you can see, they just stick onto the wall. They are peel and stick, and I cut them to size with my shears. And there you can see we got all the wall panel wires managed, and now we just need to manage all of those acoustic clouds. So we did the exact same thing, just stuck them onto the ceiling, using my laser level to make sure all of my lines for the conduit were nice and consistent. And as you can see, very, very nice and neat now, and it looks great with all of the integrated lighting. This is a very cool project. Big shout out to my client for having me do this job. It's always cool when I get to do something different than recording studios, because that makes up the majority of my work, but I love doing home theaters. This is a really cool kind of opportunity to do some custom work, integrate some lighting, and just to give my client a really great home theater that he can enjoy with his family. And he played me some songs in here. We watched a couple concert clips. It sounds phenomenal in here. Really great sound system. He has it set up perfectly. Thank you so much for watching. This has been Daniel from soundheadquarters.com. Peace out.